matter and not having a hatred for the person. So you separate personality from issues. You make sure you are talking about issues. There could be an argument, and it's good. Do not shun conflict. Do not shun argument. Do not shun disagreement. When you try to say, oh, because of our religious background, somebody shouldn't see us quarreling. Um, Quarreling is different from disagreement. So it's good that there are some disagreements, there are some conflict, but positive conflict, making sure that you are being heard, because you have to express your view. This is not fight, but when the family gets to the point where there is fear of conflict, then you are sure to know that the family, the next generation will not be involved because they want to be heard. They want you to hear what they want to bring on the table. But if the conflict results into positive change, now you get the next generation because that is what they want. They've communicated, though you disagreed, and disagreement does not mean you have not been heard. Along the line, all these disagreements will come together and form a powerful change for you. So fear of conflict should be avoided. But if there is lack of trust, there is that fear of conflict, and there is also lack of commitment. Yeah. You remember we mentioned, go back, roadblocks, and we mentioned that it is that stage when you get and there is no commitment. So lack of commitment built, fear of conflict. After a conflict, and then there's been a resolution, then that brings commitment because we all blended our opinions together and we all come on board. Interestingly, it also um, avoids triggers because now it becomes we. Because in the decision process, it was a conflict because I was heard, my case was discussed, your case was discussed. We all came together, and at the end of the day, we agreed. So if you hear the word, I said we agreed to do this. Let, guys, let me check if so Harriet, kindly alert me when Dennis joins. All right, thank you. So the lack of commitment will be avoided if you accept positive conflict. And uh, it will also help you accept accountability, and you try not to avoid accountability, you know. Okay. All right. Thank you, Richard. So do you hear me, Richard? Okay. Thank you. All right. So you avoid accountability when there is lack of trust. This conflict has positive conflict. We are not talking about the conflict that results into serious disentanglement in the family, and then this also avoids poor performance. So the result of everything that we have mentioned is that uh, there's a higher level of achievement and positive outcome if you work on trust. You avoid potholes, you avoid roadblocks, and then you avoid some triggers. This buy-in and commitment lead to a feeling of belonging, a higher level of follow-through, and greater accountability. The next point is you feel being heard, and the clarity that comes from positive conflict leads to greater buy-in from family members. You know. So normally we say that guys become very close after they have had some conflict. They have some argument, and from there they become best friends. So it's good you accept the conflicts when they arise in the family enterprise system. And trust allows for constructive, passionate discussions around the pursuit of effective governance. And for trust to exist, family members need to be open, honest, understanding, and vulnerable with each other. This is where I stop. We have to talk about vulnerability. Um, you normally trust somebody who is vulnerable to you. I'm putting vulnerability in quote. Um, People also take the advantage of vulnerability and and they come hard to such a vulnerable person. But imagine if the leader of the next generation, father, uncle, auntie, could be a grandfather, communicating to you and being vulnerable to you that no, this one I cannot do this. This is difficult for me. Your eyes will open wide and ask, so daddy, even daddy is a human, he cannot do this. And at that point, weaknesses are communicated. You understand that he's human too. That's the form of vulnerability we are talking about. We are not talking about, and it could also mean emotions, also being emotionally vulnerable to each other in the family. But there have to be security for this. You cannot go about showing your vulnerability all over. But that people in the family business, yeah, that people in a family business that you could trust, and trust is built by vulnerability. And these are paradoxical. We are talking about vulnerability at the same time talking about strength. But it is at that point when you become vulnerable that shows the strength and that brings a bond, amongst the family members. You have to also be careful who you are vulnerable to in the family enterprise system. In Africa, we have a lot of uh, outsiders. It could be a pastor, it could be an imam, it could be a counselor, it could be an outsider, it could be an advisor, a professional advisor in a family business. You know, and with all this system, you now have to be very disciplined and know who you are being vulnerable to. You cannot go about showing emotions to everybody. It's dangerous for the business. And at that point, you even tend to share a lot of information that could harm you. So you have to be careful who you are vulnerable to. But in the system, in order to build trust, you also have to be vulnerable. So this is a paradox, bringing strength in at the same time bringing vulnerable. But the point of vulnerability is where there's that bond and that trust. So please, first generation, do not be too hard, too emotionless to the next generation. You have to be vulnerable to the next generation. And next generation, you also have to be vulnerable to the first generation or the starters or the pioneers. We are saying this because there have to be that acknowledgement and recognition that it's not always about strength. It's sometimes about weakness. And that is why everybody has a weakness. Every business has a weakness. So we do SWOT analysis in strategy because we acknowledge that the system can have strength, can have weakness, can have opportunities, and can have threat. So these are some of the things I can also share when it comes to vulnerability. But I bet you if you are vulnerable, in a right way to the right person, it builds trust and it helps the family business. Right. So I would end here. Let me share something about this pyramid, and it's a wonderful pyramid in a family, but I will share just the base and hammer more on the informal governance, family governance factors in the family governance ecosystem. Now, in this pyramid, you see that the base of a success of a family enterprise are the values and the goals. So that means that a family should have their values. So the family values different, the business values different. Most of the times we mix them together. But as a family, you should have your values. As a business, you should have your values. But because it is a family business, you have that interplay, the family values emerging in the business values, because the business values are uh, the nuggets from the family values. And very, very important. And these foundations should not leave the family enterprise system. Values have to be communicated in a right way, and there should be intentionality in communicating values, in training the next generation to accept the values of the family. It is in this basis that they really, really understand values for life itself and for business. Values means why they do some things and how they do it. So why the family behaves this way, why they do this business, why they are in this business, you have to be clear on the values. Some families will not accept all businesses. You cannot go about being jack of all trades, but based on which values. So very important. So the next generation also have to be in that system where they are also value trained. They have their values. They are clear with goals. They have visions clear. If you don't do this at the base, it becomes very difficult for you. Now, we are talking about, so let me go to C. The C in this diagram, in the pyramid, is the ownership competence. You can own a business. You can be an owner of a business, an owner of great wealth, but not be competent for that wealth. You may not be competent to be an owner. So we are talking of an essential and contextual family level and individual level competences. So there's the competence, the family side, and I mentioned values, I mentioned goals, I didn't mention purpose, but in all, coming together is the purpose, having a clear purpose for the family. So family level and then individual level as a person. The next generation should have a business acumen, should have communication skills, and they have to be learning and growth oriented. And that helps the ownership system of the business to be in the right direction for success. So that's ownership. Now, there's something I want to mention, and that is the informal family governance. Normally, we have people reaching to us and saying that we want to build proper structure in our business. And when we say proper structure, we are tempted to think that, oh, we need board of directors. And I think it's a word that we have overused, and we have to and really, really understand why a business exists and why a business grows to a level before they form proper board of directors or a board. And this is not a governance session. This is a next generation, getting the next generation involved. If it was a governance session, we would have gone into the levels of governance for the business. It's not just about forming a board of directors. That's a higher level. But in the formation of the board, in the formation of a proper governance, we have something called the informal family governance. And these are the value-based business behavioral norms and rules that guide family and business members' behavior. You see. So that that values, that guides the next generation, all members in the business, everybody who is involved in the family enterprise. Is governance enough? The behavior. What is the use of board of directors if there is no value in the family and in the business? The business will surely crash. We've had stories of businesses who have very, very, very competent board members, very, very, very competent CEO, extremely competent, sometimes even from Harvard, and that business have run down because it is important you build the foundation for this top level of governance. And that is the value-based behavioral norms and rules that guide the family and the business members' behavior in both domains. So in both domains means that you are looking at family, you are also looking at business. All the members involved in this, you are talking about family members, you are talking about employees. You could have family members who are in the business, and this could be the next generation. Having the right behavior. And in other words, we call it culture sometimes. Having the right behavior in the business, in the family, is foundation enough for the governance of the business. Sometimes we copy too much and say board. But there are some things that is based on values. You get the values right. I'm not saying that the board is not important, but I'm saying that it's been overly mentioned because we failed to talk about what makes a business, why a business exists, and the values in the business. So with this informal governance structures for the family, you are sure to also have the next generation accepting, because the next generation are challengers. They challenge you and they want to understand why. And if there's a proper why something happens, why they do such an assignment, why, the why, the why, the why, the why. If you're able to answer the why, you get them involved. They have to know the purpose of why you do this, because the generation, the generation that we have now always ask, what about the future? And now the issues of sustainability, issues about environment, social governance impact, and all these things that are coming up, diversity, equity, inclusion. This is the next generation talk, and these are the next generation. So they want to understand why. When you have informal family governance system, you are sure to have some, and I'm not saying that 100%, but you get their involvement. And there are levels to which you get the involvement of the family business next generation. It could be at the ownership level, it could be the family level, the business level. Sorry about that, the business level. You could also have them at the control level. So it's not about they running the day-to-day business, but they being responsible owners. So in a business, you have the owners having the vision and then appointing responsible or competent board members. And then with the correct board now, coming down, they appoint a proper CEO for the business, and then the CEO runs the affairs. You can have the next generation involved. It could just be your family office with the next generation involved in the family office investments. It could be the administration of the family office. It could be your legal aspect. It could be anything in the system. So there are a lot of ways we could get the family business next generation in the family business. We wish you well. I'll stop sharing.